So on our previous discussion, we looked into how to vectorize, digitize the point and line entity. If you recall, in our previous session, we discussed about how to digitize and vectorize the polygon or area entity also. So today we would be, in this session, we would be looking into as to how the polygon entity can be vectorized and bring into the system. So continuing with how we had proceeded with our lab exercises, the same procedure we would adopt as we did for point and line entity. The procedure is the same, the beginning is the same. So this is what the window which would be appearing when you would open the QGIS software. The new empty project, I would bring it to the forefront, and then we need to go into layer. Within the menu bar, we have to go to layer, and if you pull it down, there is one sub menu in the layer menu bar. Menu is the create layer. There we would be creating a new shape layer, shape file layer. This we did for both point and line also. So for polygon also, we would be continuing with the same process, and that is to create a new shape file layer. And when we click on that, this kind of window would be appearing before you. You have good idea now. You have done it in our previous exercises. We have done this in the same way. So now you are familiar with it. So first we have to put the name of file. So I'll continue with the name of Aligarh, and then geometry type. Now this is now I don't need to explain it again. You know that here we have to assign the kind of geometry, the kind of entity we want to represent into our system. So we had done previously point, we had done previously line. Now we would be inserting the area entity. So we would be selecting the polygon entity. So that is how you would do. The polygon entity would be selected, and in the CRS, the coordinate reference system, it is the WGS 84. So I'll continue with the WGS 84. Here I would say first I will give you the name. So it's polygon. So I'll give or rather I will give the name as land use, because we would be using land use. It's a text data, and again the same explanation, what kind of data we want to represent, that is to be decided firstly. So either it could be text data, or it could be the value information, value in attribute information that you would put into whole number, and if the value is in decimal number also, so that you can select as decimal number, and if you want to use date, then you can also have the option of selecting the date. So mostly we use text data, where we would be giving some name to that attribute which we would be representing. So in this case, since we are drawing land use, so text data would be good enough. So this is how we will do, and then we will add to the field, this list. We would be adding the this into the attribute list, land use. Now suppose if I have any supplementary attribute information also. For example, I may have the land value of that particular polygon. So I will again select the here the land value. I will give the name land value, and instead of text data, I would use the whole number. For example, 500 rupees 500 square feet. If it is the land value, then I would use the 500 figure. So in that case, we can use the value value as the type of data which we would be representing. So I'm just giving you the example, and then I'll click OK. So that is how Aligarh this is appearing. Now you recall that what we are missing. I have intentionally missed that. So in the last session, we looked into as to how we can vectorize or digitize the area entity. Today we will be practicing it in our exercise. We will be doing it practically, and we would try to digitize the area entity in the form of polygon. So just to begin with, first we have to add the raster layer. So the raster layer is the Aligarh topographical sheet, so that I have added with it. And then what we have to do, we will be continuing with the same process which we have done earlier for point and line entity. So what we have to do, we have to go to layer. Here I would be selecting create layer, and there we would be selecting the new shape layer. This we have done earlier with the point entity and line entity, so we would be continuing with the same kind of process. Here I would give the name as, say, Aligarh, as the base map is for Aligarh city, the topographical sheet is for Aligarh city. Now here there is some difference. In geometry type, if you recall, earlier when we digitized point map, point entity, we selected point. When we selected line entity, we selected line. Now today we would be selecting area entity, so we would be selecting the polygon entity. So here we are selecting the polygon entity because this digitization, this vectorization is for area entity. Earlier we had digitized the point entity and also the line entities. Point entity which did not had any length and width, line entity has had the length but it did not had the width. Here in this case it will have both the length as well as width. It will be representing area entity, and that's why we have selected polygon. We would continue with the WGS84 as our base map is also on the same coordinate reference system projection, so we are using this WGS84. Now come to the name. Now name I would give, since it is the representation of area entity, I would put land use as the attribute. You see, in new field we would always be using that, we are representing any attribute of that particular spatial location. So this is the name of the attribute, and then we would go for what type of attribute it is, whether it is being represented as text information. For example, if there is land use, then we may say that it is a forest cover, or it is a settlement, or it is a water body, lake, river. So these would be the land use. For example, it can be agricultural land. So these would be the land use. So the area entity, they would be represented here as the text data. But suppose if the same land use, if we are we are representing, for example, land value. So that would be represented through some figures, through some digits. So that you can use as whole number, or the figure is in decimal also, we can take as the decimal number. So depending on the type of attribute we want to represent, we have to select what kind of representation it is required, and depending on that we would be selecting the type of the attribute information. So here we are selecting as text data, and we will add to the field, and this way we can add n number of field. So that's what is important, and I'm only selecting one, and I'm selecting as I'm clicking OK. So that way the Aligarh polygon map is ready for digitizing. If you recall, I have mentioned this earlier also. I'll repeat that you have to check that whether the file layer, the map layer, if we are digitizing or if we are editing, it has to be in editing mode, and it has to be highlighted like this. Here it is highlighted, and also it is to be selected like here it is selected. So this means that it is in editing mode, and this you can do it. So this is what you need to be very careful. Otherwise, what will happen if you are working with some more than one or two map layers, then sometimes by error the map which you want to digitize, it goes in the background and some other map is highlighted and is maybe in the editing mode. So then whatever modification and corrections and digitizing you would be doing, that won't go into the desired map layer. So that you need to be a little cautious about that. That's the point which I want to make. So after checking that this is in editing mode, the map layer is the appropriate map layer which we would be where we want to digitize. If it is being done, then you have to select this edit toggle editing, the pen sign. When you will click it, then you would see that there are many other options which have come up. And if you recall, in point there was some other symbol which has come, another toolbar which was appearing. In line entity also, when we were digitizing line entity, another symbol had come. Now we are digitizing area entity, so another kind of symbol has come which is representing the area entity or the polygon. So we have to select this. So when you select this, this will come like this, and then you another important fact which you should be considering while digitizing the area entity, that it is a closed entity. The polygons means that it is a closed entity. So you need to start from one point and you have to come back, finish it off at the same point. So when this is to be done, you should be a little careful, because the ground realities are not exactly taken a very continuous shape. There may be some irregularities. So you have to zoom it in, enlarge your map, the base map on which you are digitizing. Second is, you start from one point and either you start from clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction. This is the best way to complete the area entity. The digitization would be more appropriate and exact. Otherwise, what will happen if you are digitizing and you make error in such a way that you are creating a false polygon? For example, if you start like this, I'll just give you an example. Now you see, you start like this and then you do like this. You see what has happened? There is one, there is two polygons have been formed. Now we wanted only one, but we have created two polygons. So that we do not want. So this is one important thing which you need to be thinking about. You should not do like this. So what I would suggest, that we will start from one point, take either clockwise movement of the cursor or anti-clockwise. I will prefer the anti-clockwise movement. So first I will zoom it in so that we will have a fair idea of our area under investigation. So now I will take this and I will start the built up area of the city. So this way I will go like this and I will continue with it. And roughly I am taking what I need to digitize, but if you would do carefully, then you can have a better representation. This is just an exercise and give you an example as to how you need to digitize any area entity. Interesting part is that in this particular case, we are looking into the built up extent of the city, and here I would give it like this, and I will give another rather I will give and I'll say okay. So this is how roughly it will appear. Now I will remove this base layer map so that you have a better idea as to what we mean with other kind of digitization which we can make, or how another polygons can be made. Now you see, suppose there is a situation where this much area is common for the adjoining polygon also. Now you remember that when we discussed about the various issues related with the digitization process, or bringing the spatial information into the system, we discussed that there can be many possibilities of error bringing into our data. So what happens if this boundary is common for two adjoining polygons which are representing different attributes? So what we can do, if we will digitize again this line, then it will either override it, or there will be some gap between these two. So for that matter, we need to be very careful, and there are many options in the software which we can adopt for it. For example, in this QGIS software, there is this snapping toolbar, enable snapping. Now in your system, initially it might not appear. So what I would suggest, that you click here in the toolbar, menu toolbar section, and click the right button. So here you will find many toolbars which would be appearing, and here you see the snapping toolbar, it is already selected, so that is why it is appearing in the toolbar. If it is not selected, then you should select it so that it can come into your toolbar, and then you select this. And when you'll select this, then you will have many options, and I'll try to explain what are these options. First is this one, which says allow overlap. Now what happens allow overlap? You see, you click this and click allow overlap on active layer. So what I would do, I am saying that this line needs to be common. So I'll click inside it, and I'll click here, and I'll click here, and I'll give it 2, and I'll say it is a forest. So you see, now another polygon has been added to it, but there is no line which is where there is duplication. So that's one idea of it. Then there can be another, you see here. So here it is enable tracing, and before that I would say it is about enable tracing in the section. You click this and then you click this. So what will happen, it will take this intersection. This vertex would be taken, and we do not want to create another vertex. So from this vertex to this vertex, and then I'll say this, and I'll click here, and I'll say here as 3, and I'll say it is open space or park. I'll say okay. So here it is the third one. So you see, these are important ways of polygon formation. Now many of the polygons, they would be a different entity like this. Here you will have another entity, or another polygon entity. It is away from this, so there is no issue with it. Maybe it is a settlement, or it is an industry. So I'll say it is industry, and I'll click OK. So this is possible. There is no problem with it. But those polygons which have common borders, there you need to use these tools for digitizing. So that's an interesting aspect which I wanted to highlight, and you would be familiar with it now. And I would suggest you that you should now digitize yourself any map, and then you would find it very interesting. And you see, these exercises which we have seen in these last few sessions, where we have bring into our own data into the system. We are now representing the spatial information. We are now representing the spatial information is being used now with the help of the softwares. So what we did for that, first we georeference the map. That means whatever area entity we want to, geographical area we want to represent in our mapping spatial representation, we have georeferenced them. And after georeferencing them, then we would be mapping ourselves, our own area of interest, on our own phenomena of interest. So that way these phenomena can be represented in the form of point, line and area. So we are picking up the point entity in our map which has been georeferenced. We are picking up line entity, the linear features in the map, and we are representing through line entity, and various area entities in the form of polygon. And that is how you can incorporate any information in the spatial way, in the spatial format. So that's an interesting part, and that is what the basic idea of all of you to encourage using these spatial representation for any phenomena which you are representing. Another important point which I would like to add, that you might have seen that in all three, point, line and area, when we are assigning the various parameters, there you can add as many attributes as you want, and these attributes can also be of different type. You can include and you can select appropriate attribute type. It can be in the form of text, in the form of whole number, in the form of decimal number, or even date if you are representing the time dimension into the spatial information. So that way I would say that it's a very important part of our program on spatial information science, where practically you would be able to do these exercises, and you would learn as to how you can represent spatial information into your, and bring into your discipline the spatial information. That's what the objective of this program.